Hey everyone, it's Mrs. Slauson, and this is week 4, right, of remote learning. So let's just talk real quick about the cover that you guys see here. So I just want to point out, I've really tried to give some thought about this and get you a little bit more organized and what you guys should be expecting for the remote learning part. So let's just talk about, for example, just week 4. In week 4, we will be covering 2.1 and 2.2. You're going to notice there's only a total of 3 sections in this chapter. It's a really short chapter. And then in week 6, we will be reviewing. So, for instance, in week 4, you're going to see the PP video. PP, right? Funny. So anyway, that is the play, pause it video. So you need to make sure that you watch the videos all the way through. When you're done, a green circle is going to pop up with a check mark that says complete. You need to make sure that you reach the end. For these videos, however many questions there are, your score that's going in PowerSchool will be how many questions you got right. So if I put 2 questions, which I've been typically doing, and you don't get any of the questions right, you'll be getting a 0 out of 2, regardless if you take the notes or not. So you need to make sure that you're watching the video and completing the questions, because the questions are simple enough that you should get all of the points. All right? The other thing that's going to happen is there are due dates. So this is the week of 4. This starts week 5. You've got 1 week to get this video done, and on this Monday, December 14th, I'm going to be checking, and if the videos aren't done, you have a 0, okay? If you get them done at a later date, it will be your responsibility to come and find me to get those grades in there, all right? So just a quick heads up about that. I will not go and back to check to see if you did them past the due date. All right, so another thing that's going to be different is we're actually going to do 1 section of the notes in class. You're going to have a quiz, also known as the Showcase of Learning. This week, it's actually from our last chapter, 1.2. And then in week 4, I expect you to submit a couple of things to OneNote, and then you will be turning something in class as well. So it's all labeled here. And when you go to OneNote, you should be looking for this, Practice 2.1, page 4, 2.1 Notes, page 6. And then remember, you're going to submit, and don't forget to hit sync. All right, so enough of me on my bandwagon there. Let's get started. So chapter 2 is all about functions and function notations. So basically what's going to happen is we've been using these variables x and y, and what you are going to see is y is going to be replaced with what we call f of x. So in our first section, we just want to know what's the difference between a relation and a function. So starting with our notes. So a relation is just a set of ordered pairs so an x-coordinate with its y-coordinate. All right? So anything that we can put on a piece of graph paper, that's a relation. All right? Just for some other words, you might see me use the words input. I've already done that first, so just a reminder that x is your input and y is your output. All right, so let's talk specifically about what a function is. So a function is a subset or a type of relation. Okay, so kind of an example of that is in geometry, you learned about 4-sided figure. All 4-sided figures are called quadrilateral, but then there are subsets of quadrilateral. There's the square, there's the rectangle, there's the rhombus. So think of the relation as the general broad piece, and then a function is a certain type. It's like the square. So it's a type of relation where each input has one output. And now what I'm going to add is each input, which is each x, only has one output. It only has one y. All right, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about how easy it is to tell something's a function. I'll put it in simpler terms in just a moment. So let's talk about the 3 different ways we can represent a relation or a function. So you can do this through an equation. This is y equals x squared. A table. So what I'm going to do is just pick some numbers for x we're going to use this equation. So if I take negative 2 squared, negative 2 times negative 2, I get 4. So this is the input, this is the output. So again, in a function, this input only has one output. Negative 2 will only have the output of 4. It will never have the output of 5 or 6 or 7. All right, negative 1. Negative 1 squared is negative 1 times negative 1. That's 1. 0 squared, 0 times 0 is 0. And then 1 squared is 1, and 2 squared is 4. So again, the input of 2 can only have the output of 4. So 2 won't be able to have 5. All right? 2 can only have 4 as its output. When I graph it, so I'm going to graph really fast. So I'm going to go over 2 and up 4. I'm going to go over 1 and up 1. That's this point. Here is 0, 0, 1, 1, and go over 2 and up 4. And again, this x squared is called a quadratic. And again, this is one of our 3 shapes. Okay? So I can represent a relation or a function in an equation, a table, and in a graph. So how do I determine if a relation is a function? So the easiest way to do it is actually through these two, through the graph and through the table. And for Algebra 1, we're not going to really worry about in an equation. So you're going to see this box just stay empty. All right? So the first part, it's a lot of writing, so I wrote it for you. So what I'm going to do is just kind of highlight those important things. So let me see if I can actually find a highlighter. Let's see if it works. And if you have a graph, a picture of your shape, you're going to use what is called the vertical line test. So we're going to be lazy and nickname it the VLT. So the VLT is going to check to see if your x value, if your input has more than one y value, more than one output. Because remember, an input up here can only have one output. All right? So the way you do this is you just start drawing vertical lines through your shape. So here's the first vertical line. All right? And if I look at the point that it hit, that point, I'm going to write it over here, is negative 1, 1. So when x is negative 1, it's only going to have this output. All right? So x being negative 1 is never going to have an output of y down here, of negative 5, for instance. So again, the easiest way is you're just going to start drawing vertical lines. And so I'm kind of going to get out of the mathy part of this. If it passes the vertical line test, it's a function. So how does it pass the vertical line test? When you draw your shape, if it intersects your shape more than once, that means it's a relation. But if it intersects your shape just once, so here it's just once, here it's just once, and here it's just once. If it passes that vertical line test, it hits the shape once, it's a function. All right? If it hits it more than once, it's not a function, it stays a relation. In a table, it's pretty easy to see. So what you basically want to do is if you're looking at a table, you just want to see, does x repeat? That's the question you want to ask yourself. If the answer is yes, then it's a relation. And there'll be some examples that we look at in just a moment. If the answer is no, if x doesn't repeat, then it is what we call a function. So let's take a look at these two different ways. So in this first example, we're going to determine if the relation is a function. Then we're going to explain why it is or isn't. So is this a function? So since I have a shape, I'm going to just start drawing vertical lines. It hits it once, it hits it once, it hits it once. So every time I draw a vertical line, it's hitting the shape once. So this is a function. And the reason I would give is that it passes the vertical line test. In a test, you pass or you fail. So let's go to this one. So here I'm going to draw a vertical line. And if you notice, it actually hits it twice. It hits it here, and it hits it here. And I'm going to write these coordinates down. I'm going to approximate them. So this is about 4, 2, and this is about 4, negative 2. So for now, no, this is a relation. And the reason I'm going to give is that it fails the vertical line test. And again, it's failing because it hit that shape twice when I drew that vertical line. So now let's look at a table. In a table, I want to ask myself, does x repeat? So when I look, all of these x's are different. So that means this is a function. And the reason I'm going to take is x never repeats. So if you take a look at this shape, remember, this is X and this is X. So if I were actually to put this one as a table, right? Let's make a little table here. Here's X, here's Y. So I get 4 and 2, and I get 4 and -2. If you look in the table, X is repeating. And again, kind of more the mathematical ways, this input of 4 can only have one output. And right now, this input has 2 outputs because 4 can have 2 and 4 can have -2. All right, so let's keep looking. So here I'm going to look. It's a table. Do the X's repeat? Yep, they sure do. This 4 has 2 outputs. It has 5 and it has -2. So this is going to be a relation. And it's because X equaling 4 repeats. All right, here if I start drawing vertical lines, it hits it once, it hits it once, it hits it once. So this is a function. And again, the reason why is that it passes the vertical line test. All right, here, are the X's different? Yes. So for instance, this X, this input only has this as its output. So this gets to be function. And the reason I say is X never repeats. All right, next shape. Again, this is a quadratic. It hits it once. It hits it once. That's another very straight line. So this is a function. And again, it passes the vertical line test. And then in my table, all of these X's are different. So it is a function. Again, I'll just say X never repeats. And one more. Passes the vertical line test, passes the vertical line test, so this is a function. And again, it passes the vertical line test. All right, so those are the notes for the first section. So I'm actually going to stop the video notes here, and I'll pick up on the second section in a separate video. But before I do, what I want you to see is practice 2.1, you will submit to OneNote. So when you go to OneNote and you tap on your name, and you see chapter 2 now, and you're going to see different tabs. And one of them will say practice 2.1, and it will actually say page 4. So make sure you take a picture of this whole thing so I can see that. And then don't forget at the top of your phone screen, those 3 little dots to hit sync. All right, that's it.